Hey guys, today I'm going to show you everything you need to properly wind a secondary coil for a flyback transformer. Step 1 is making a spool. What I used for a spool is this rubber hose. So notice the inner diameter of this hose fits perfectly around my core. Try to stay away from cardboard. See, we're building this for the purpose of extremely high voltage, over 30,000 volts. So you want to use something that's a really good insulator. So what I did is I took some of this, measured it out, cut it to length, and I peeled the outer layer off. I don't want it to be too thick because the core space is limited. You want to use some kind of heat temperature, like heat resistant epoxy. You can use hot glue, but I really wouldn't recommend it because for the final step we will be putting this in the oven to cure. So you'll go ahead and make your spool, and you'll poke a small hole for the wire to go through. For flyback transformers to get around, to be able to fit between 700 and 1,000 turns, you want to use kind of thin wire. Here I'm using 30 gauge wire. So what you'll do is you'll feed the wire through and you'll heavily insulate that. You want to heavily insulate at the start on this output, and when you're done with the coil you want to heavily insulate the other output. That way you don't have arc overs from the leads going to the coil. So once you get your spool made and you get that wire on there and well insulated, what you will do is you will neatly wrap the coil like this. See how close together I got those? You want to wrap them very neatly. Now when you get to the bottom of the spool, you're going to stop and just wrap it over and tape it. Now another thing you'll need is enamel lacquer nail polish. Do not get the instant dry. Just get the regular nail polish. And here's the reason why. Once you get that coil wrapped and you have the wire secured to the bottom of the spool, you're going to heavily apply the nail polish onto the coil. And what happens is through the capillary action, if you do not know what that is, go look it up on Wikipedia. It's pretty much essentially how a candle wick or a lantern wick will work. But the nail polish will soak into those spaces. Just heavily apply it and keep applying nail polish until you can no longer see any bit of the coil coming through. So when you're done, it'll look something like this and you cannot see the wire. Next, what you'll do is you can take a hair dryer to speed things up, or you can just sit there and wait. I like to kind of use the hair dryer for the initial first 30 seconds of drying, because heating it up causes air bubbles to escape and you want to get all the air out of there. That's why you want to neatly wind them together as close as possible. And once the nail polish is dry, you'll take electrical tape. You want to get a good quality electrical tape. I recommend, see, there's stuff like this, but this is really cheap stuff. Get something good, and you'll see on the inside it's rated for a maximum of 600 volts. You want that, and if they make it, try to get higher. But you'll wrap this around the dried nail polish coil. Not too much, just one layer. And just get it all good and covered, and make sure it kind of overlaps the ends, and pull the electrical tape not too tight, but just nice and snug, because remember, we want to keep that air out of there. Then once you do that, you'll untape the wire from the bottom, and then you will put a little bit of your sealant or glue, whatever you're using for glue, put a thin layer of it, bring the wire from the bottom back to the top, set that down. You can actually use hot glue for this part, I guess. This is just enough to hold it in place. And if you want, also lacquer it over with a little bit of nail polish, but make sure it's dry, it's kind of dry. And you'll take a piece of electrical tape horizontally and tape that wire, and then you'll start winding back towards the bottom. And you just keep repeating the process. Finish the winding, lacquer, dry, electrical tape, feed back to the top, insulate, wind again. And then when you're finally done, like I said at the beginning, heavily insulate that output lead. And here's why you want to try to use some kind of temperature resistant epoxy or something for the construction of the spool. Because when we're done, because it actually takes a long time to do this, if you were to wait for the nail polish to fully dry. So what we're going to do is when we're done, we're going to put it in the oven and we're going to set this to bake at about 250 degrees. Do not go above that. I know you might want to speed it up, but you don't want to melt the tape or cause any trouble with the epoxy. So do not go over 250 degrees. So once your oven's preheated and it's at 250 degrees or somewhere between 200 and 250, 230 would probably be a good comfortable medium. You want to leave it in there. I'd say I'm going to leave mine in there for about an entire day. And that way, any kind of moisture or any kind of the solvent that the nail polish is mixed with, that way it can all evaporate out of your coil. Because you don't want any kind of conductiveness inside the coil. I'm not really sure how conductive the liquid nail polish is, but I know after it dries that enamel is not really conductive at all. It's actually, enamel is what that magnet wire is coated with to begin with. And there are other variations of coated wire too, but the current one that I'm using is enamel coated copper wire. And I've used it many times for several different flybacks, and it works very well. But that is how you can insulate it without having to submerge it in oil or use a submersive vacuum pump system. Just a simple way to have a dry flyback. And if anybody has any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll be glad to answer them. Thanks for watching.